In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Good morning. It's sunny outside. It's great, isn't it? Spring is coming. It's awesome. Today's an awesome day in the church, capital C, in the greater church, because there is a really cool intersection today that does not happen all the time with regard to the feast days of the church. As you came in this morning, you probably saw the beautiful icon of the Annunciation, which is always March 25th, today, March 25th. But today is also the feast of the Synaxis, or the celebration of St. Mary of Egypt, which is always celebrated on the 5th Sunday of Lent. So you can kind of see how these two feast days happened to intersect this year, and that's typically not the case. Typically they don't land on the same day. And it's kind of an amazing intersection that I wanted to just bring up for all of us this morning briefly, to just consider St. Mary of Egypt and her being juxtaposed or placed next to the Virgin Mary today. And it may seem like, if you know their stories, that the only thing they might share is their name. If we know their stories well, St. Mary of Egypt grew up in a life of sin. She gave in to her desires of lust and her desires to deceive those around her. That was the life that St. Mary of Egypt lived. And as a young person, as a young adult, she actually traveled for the feast day of the Holy Cross, knowing that many faithful would be gathering in Jerusalem, just to try to entice men to fall into their own potential desires as well, and to fulfill her own lustful desires. And we placed her next to the Panagia, the Virgin Mary, who had quite a different upbringing. The Virgin Mary, as we know, was brought into the temple at the age of 2 or 3 years old and lived there. She was brought up in the church. She was brought to church every Sunday, if you will, by her parents. She did the things that she was supposed to do, so to speak. And at the age of 13 or 14 years old, she was told, "You are going to conceive the Son of God." Did you catch that? She was told, "You are going to conceive the Son of God without seed." And she said, "Okay, let's do this, okay." She was okay with it. And Mary lived her life bringing up Christ himself. She lived her life offering her entire being to him, even to the point where, as we know in the church, we say that she suffered a spiritual suffering, almost a spiritual death, the day that she lost her son, because of the deep love that she had for him. She was entrenched in the church and so holy that she was chosen to accept on her own accord bearing Christ. Now, I said a moment ago that maybe the only thing that the Virgin Mary and St. Mary of Egypt might share is their name. But even if their lives were completely different, even if St. Mary of Egypt didn't experience her true conversion until the last days of her life, when she received communion after spending 40 years in the desert, they also shared one other powerful, powerful thing, which is hope. They shared in hope. The Virgin Mary, accepting the message of Gabriel, said, "Yes, let it be according to your word." But as we heard in this morning's gospel lesson, she doubted. Wouldn't you do the same? I know I would if I was told a message such as that. But she hoped. She believed in the message of Gabriel and believed that if it was according to the will of God, that it would be done. And in a similar way, St. Mary of Egypt, who, having a moment of conversion in her life at the Church of the Holy Cross in Jerusalem, realizing the depth of her own sin, she was actually not able to enter into the church. And she realized at that moment that she needed to change her way, also had hope. St. Mary of Egypt had hope that the depth of her sin was not intransformable. She had hope that if she spent her life trying to change, trying to live with Christ, that she would be forgiven. She had that hope. And she went and lived for 40 years. Oftentimes we hear about her story and we say, St. Mary went and lived in the desert for 40 years and then received communion. She lived in the desert for 40 years, alone, hungry, struggling, hoping that change would come into her life, and it did. When the elder Zosimos brought her communion on the last days of her life, she too had hope. And isn't it true in our lives that we all need hope? Don't we need hope? A couple weeks ago, I spoke about the pain and struggle that we might have in our lives on the feast day of the cross. And the doorway toward owning our struggles is hope. The way that you and I can face the challenges we have, the worries that we might have in school, the worries that we might have about where we're going to go next after college, the worries about our children going to college, the struggles that we might have in our marriages, in our families, with our grandchildren, and with our own lives, as maybe we even realize that we're the last generation left of our family. Don't we all need hope? You see, I think that we all know that we need hope. But my question today is, do we all go to the church to find it? Where do we find our hope? This is a question for us to think about this morning. And really, where is hope offered? Forgive me for a moment, as I would like to read for you a quote from our new Metropolitan Nathaniel. Metropolitan Nathaniel was enthroned yesterday at the Holy Church of the Annunciation in the city. And he gave us a message of hope that I think we can all own and take into our hearts today. During his address at his enthronement yesterday, he said this, quote, "Today, millions of young people are taking to the streets of cities and towns around the world. They have gathered just a short distance from our own cathedral. The young people are marching in the streets because they demand that their lives and safety become a priority for those in positions of authority. It is daunting to consider that these young people, our young people, are not marching to the church to find refuge or a place to voice their concerns. They sadly first take to the streets because they feel that no one cares about them in their homes, in their schools, or other familiar places, yes, including the church. I know that we all desire to do the best we can for our youth, but as a unified metropolis family, we must find new ways to engage our youth. It is not enough for us to issue them invitations and passively wait for them to arrive at our doorsteps. It is our responsibility to go to them. Yes, even if it means joining them in the streets." You all, to me, that message of our new Metropolitan is a message of hope. It's a message that recognizes that there is real struggle and pain in our lives, and it also is a recognition that we as a church can and must do better, but can only do that together as a unified church, as he said. We must find hope in our church for it to be the #1 place of refuge in our lives, for it to be the place that people like St. Mary of Egypt find their conversion point, for it to be a place like for the Virgin Mary is a place that fosters a saint and the Mother of God. It is my offering and my challenge for us this morning to all do what it takes to make our church a place of hope. To do more than pass by someone in coffee hour and to look them in the eyes and really ask them and want to know the answer to how are you doing. To come to the church when we have our own struggles and come to the clergy in confession, and come to our brothers and sisters, and all unified find this place as a place of hope, to find this place as a place of refuge and a well of real salvation. This is my challenge for us. As our new Metropolitan suggested yesterday, I would agree in saying that we can only do this together. May we make our church a place of hope. May we, in 2 weeks, come here with the goosebumps that come on the back of our neck, feeling the resurrection, when in the darkness we light our Paschal candles. And may we be the hope and find the hope in and with every single one of us who are standing together. Amen.